People drive through their neighborhoods every day. The same streets, the same turns, the same traffic lights changing at the same intersections. Cars move steadily from home to work in the morning and back again in the evening rush. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels stalled. Horns sound occasionally, not in anger, just impatience. Lights flash briefly at intersections before changing. Movement continues. Shops are open. Customers browse inside slowly. People pause in aisles, comparing prices, checking phones. Lines form at checkout counters. Small talk fills the space between shoppers and staff, about the weather, about weekend plans, about things that don't require urgency. Homes light up in the evenings as dusk settles. Families gather for dinner around kitchen tables. Lights glow through windows as night falls gradually. Televisions flicker in living rooms with evening news or familiar shows playing softly in the background. Parks stay busy on weekends. Children play on swings and slides, laughing without concern. Dogs run freely across the grass while owners call them back. People walk the paths alone or with friends, enjoying the space. Benches stay occupied. Readers, couples, quiet conversations that blend into the scenery. Daily life looks completely stable on the surface. Routines continue without major interruption or visible disruption. Everything appears unchanged from a year or two ago. The same familiar rhythm repeats day after day. At first glance, nothing seems wrong. That's exactly why this matters. Today, we examine why normal cities stop feeling safe without any visible change. Not because of dramatic collapse, not because of sudden crisis, but because subtle patterns begin reshaping cities long before people consciously recognize what's happening. What you're about to see isn't about shock. It's about delay, and about how human perception consistently lags behind slow-moving reality. Most people imagine danger in cities as something obvious, immediate, impossible to miss. Empty streets in broad daylight, boarded-up storefronts lining entire blocks, headlines filled with urgent crisis warnings repeating every day, abandoned neighborhoods that stand out clearly to anyone driving through. Those images feel intuitive. They match how decline is supposed to look. But long-term change almost never starts that way. It begins in the quiet phase, when everything still looks normal, when traffic flows smoothly in the morning, when cafes stay full during lunch hours, when families attend weekend sports, birthday parties, community events without hesitation, when homes still feel permanent, when neighborhoods still feel predictable, when schools still operate on familiar schedules, calendars unchanged. This illusion of stability is powerful, and it lasts far longer than the underlying conditions support. It keeps people anchored. It delays reassessment. It narrows options, slowly, almost invisibly. This is the phase where cities feel safest, and it's often the most deceptive. Here's why that normalcy persists. Because the underlying change doesn't arrive as a single moment. It doesn't arrive with a siren. It arrives through thousands of individual decisions, made privately, rationally, over extended periods of time. Households don't panic. They reassess. They don't ask, "Is my city failing?" They ask smaller questions. Can we still afford this comfortably? Is this still worth the trade-offs? Does this still make sense for the next 5 years? Remote and hybrid work creates flexibility that didn't exist at scale before. Ownership costs rise gradually rather than all at once. Insurance renewals adjust quietly. Property tax reassessments arrive without drama. Utility and maintenance expenses climb alongside everything else. None of these moments feel decisive on their own. They don't force emergency conversations. They don't trigger immediate action. Families weigh trade-offs carefully. Schools, commutes, community ties, affordability, quality of life. One household researches alternatives quietly. Another lists their home after months of comparison. A third decides to wait, not because conditions are improving, but because change still feels optional. Moves happen individually, without coordination, without public announcement, without headlines. From the outside, nothing looks different. But direction is already shifting. This is where perception breaks down. Humans are good at noticing sudden change. They are remarkably bad at noticing slow rebalancing. As long as daily routines remain intact, the mind categorizes the environment as stable, even when the math underneath no longer supports that conclusion. This isn't ignorance. It isn't denial. It's cognitive efficiency. The brain is designed to conserve attention. It assumes tomorrow will resemble yesterday unless forced to reconsider. That assumption keeps daily life manageable, but it also delays recognition. Cities don't feel dangerous when risk is accumulating slowly. They feel dangerous only once options disappear. Now let's look at what the data quietly confirms. Based on Census Bureau Vintage 2024 estimates released in late 2025, the U.S. population continues to grow overall, reaching roughly 340 million. That growth is driven primarily by international migration. Natural population increase contributes less as birth rates remain low. On the surface, this reinforces a sense of stability. Growth still exists. The country still expands. But domestic migration tells a different story. High-cost coastal states like California, New York, and Illinois continue to see net domestic outflows, hundreds of thousands leaving annually. Lower-cost states in the South and interior continue to gain from these moves. Yet even in those gaining states, growth has moderated. Pandemic-era surges of 3 to 4% have slowed to closer to 1 or 2% in many metro areas. These shifts don't feel dramatic. They don't interrupt daily life. They don't shut down neighborhoods. Construction cranes remain visible. Downtown districts stay active. Restaurants and venues operate at normal capacity. Festivals, markets, and events continue as usual. Nothing about this feels like decline. This is the core misunderstanding. Change driven by individual decisions doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. Insurance premiums in risk-prone areas rise steadily, not explosively. Property taxes adjust upward following reassessments. Utility costs creep higher alongside increasingly volatile weather patterns. None of these trigger panic on their own. They stack. Remote and hybrid work remains stable across roughly a quarter to a third of the workforce. That flexibility quietly decouples residents from office location. People don't rush to leave. They simply gain the option to. And options, once available, eventually get used. Early indicators surface quietly. School enrollment often shifts before broader population changes appear. Not because families disappear overnight, but because renewal slows. National enrollment stabilizes overall, but regional patterns diverge. High-cost districts see modest declines from recent peaks. Growth regions quietly revise projections downward. These shifts don't empty classrooms overnight. They flatten expectations, lead to combined classes, trigger budget discussions behind closed doors. Housing markets reflect similar signals. Listings stay on the market slightly longer. Outbound moving trends rise gradually. Search behavior shifts toward alternative regions over time. None of this feels urgent. That's the point. Urgency comes late. Recalibration starts early. Look at how this plays out across regions. In coastal California metros, domestic outflows persist year after year, even as tech, tourism, and culture remain vibrant. In parts of the Midwest and Northeast, slower growth combines with aging populations. Enrollment declines become noticeable, but parks remain maintained, shops stay open, and community events continue. Even in Sunbelt magnets, moderation appears. Growth slows. Costs rise. Long-term residents reassess. The city doesn't break. It recalibrates. And recalibration is far harder to notice than collapse. This is why gradual change is so difficult to respond to. Annual shifts of 1 or 2% feel insignificant, easy to dismiss amid familiar routines. But compounded over 5 or 10 years, those changes reshape everything: school funding, local business growth, tax revenues, service delivery, neighborhood character. By the time concern becomes visible, most of the decisions have already happened, privately. People didn't flee. They planned. And once enough people plan quietly in the same direction, the outcome becomes irreversible long before it becomes visible. Earlier in this series, we looked at how cities can thin without ever looking broken, how the absence of visible crisis hides long-term structural change. Tomorrow, we go one layer deeper. Why population decline never starts with empty streets. Because the first things cities lose aren't buildings or businesses, they're momentum, renewal, and future arrivals. And by the time streets look empty, the direction changed years earlier. This is Urban Bird.